everyone. We're going to get started. So, good morning. We hope you all enjoyed this morning's keynote speaker and had an engaging networking break with our gracious sponsors, Intercept. We want to welcome you all to our first breakout of the day. So this is track 1, caring for yourself and others while rare. I'm Jane Nicholson, and I will be your breakout host for this morning's session. I would like to also welcome those of you joining us remotely through the live stream. And I would like to remind you all that joining us to download our mobile app so that you can use the Q&A feature. So today's session is going to be called Eating Well, Taking Care of Yourself Through Nutrition. We will hear from experts and advocates on how to successfully manage those rare diseases who have dietary restrictions. Whether you want to learn how to shop for yourself by understanding nutrition labels or navigate community and social functions while tailoring to your dietary constraints, our speakers have knowledge and tips for you. Today we'll be hearing from Andra Stratton, president and co-founder of Lipodystrophy United, Sarah Chamberlin, executive director at National PKU News, and Jacque Tarlton, co-founder of Plant Chicks. Beautiful. Let's welcome them up.
Good morning. Hope you, if you got in last night, had some fun and ate well, didn't drink too much, and got some sleep, because I didn't follow any of those, and then now I'm going to tell you that you should. No. I'm going to talk today a little bit about how I work with my community in dietary issues that we have. I'm Andra Stratton, co-founder of Lipodystrophy United, and actually have a podcast too, Rare in Common. Sarah will be speaking right after me, and she's going to talk more specifically about how diet can be used as a therapy. And then Jackie's going to end up with really reminding us all that we cannot work well if we're running on empty. So I noticed my typo this morning. I apologize. One thing I really wanted to be very clear about this session, we all wanted to be really clear about this session, is that we're not here to suggest that if you simply took care of yourself better, that you would be well, or that your child would be well. So a doctor, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, maybe, but usually not. So maybe have you all heard, we get it all the time when you share your rare disease or your complications. People are very free with their advice, which is well-meaning. So have you tried raw? Have you tried stopping eating meat? Have you gone paleo? Have you gone keto? Have you tried the alkaline diet? Whatever the case may be. And the most important, which I mean maybe really works, is if you just ate like Tom Brady, then really you would be well. But again, some of those things work. I actually do follow the keto diet for very scientific reasons, but I would never suggest that the way my body responds to keto is the way that your body responds to keto. The deal is nutrition is really a tool, and no matter if you're a caregiver, if you're a family member of someone rare, if you are rare yourself, we talk a lot here at Global Genes about our toolkit, and we just really wanted to add to that toolkit and talk about nutrition. In some cases, so again, I will talk about lipodystrophy as a case example, and Sarah is going to talk about her disease state that she works in. In her case, and with her community, the diet is an actual treatment. And in other cases, diet is an adjunct, and then still in other the rest of us, really, diet is a tool for all of us to stay balanced. For those of you who don't know about lipodystrophy, I want to also just address the elephant in the room, that I'm not somebody who is a hardcore CrossFitter who spends all of my time at the gym and then eats very specifically. If you are a hardcore CrossFitter, that's awesome. I think the tires are like remarkable. But my physique is actually due to my rare disease. I don't have adipose tissue, the fat underneath the skin, I don't have that in the right places. So while I do recognize that I would look like someone who would be lifting weights and drinking protein shakes all day, that is exactly the opposite. I probably would lift a remote control on my cell phone more frequently. So in my case, the adipose tissue, the fat cells die. So if your body doesn't have anywhere safe to store fat, it hangs out in all the wrong places. So you can imagine, if you've got just fat flowing through your blood and organs, it's not necessarily a good thing. So if you are looking at me, imagine that the insides, I'm morbidly obese. Another problem with my community, my specific disease state, is that I have a lack of leptin. Your body's fat cells create a hormone called leptin. Leptin regulates your satiation, and if you don't have leptin, your brain does never receive the signal that it's full. So while I can technically eat, well, no, not even technically. The idea is that I could eat whatever I want because I cannot get fat. It's impossible for me to look fat. I never feel full. But with that extreme desire for food, I mean, it just becomes an absolute obsession. I'm like caveman. The party tip that goes along with that is hang out with me. I will always find the food. I will always know what's being served and probably what tastes the best because I'm not picky. I'll eat everything. But prior to any treatment, we had to be starved. I mean, there was starvation. It was full. There was absolutely no way to keep the fat out of our blood and organs. So we're never full, but we're not supposed to eat at all. It was a pretty horrific experience for my community. And there's really no research on it. And there's some research on maybe how to manage the organs once they're damaged and to try and keep them from transplant. But really, we don't have a huge understanding about managing that hunger and all the fat that's blowing through us. And our specialists have contradictory advice, so it's very complicated. And the thing is I don't think I'm saying anything that some of you don't experience. With rare disease, it is often that you will go to one doctor who will say, wow, you look like, your numbers look like you need to do this. You go to another doctor who says, well, really, you probably shouldn't eat this. You should probably eat that. And that really makes it so challenging to take care of yourself because really, all right, nothing's working. I'm just going to give up. So that's what I experienced with my community. And that's a huge challenge. And I don't think it's a challenge. I mean, yes, our disease state is extremely unusual in this hunger versus can't get fat cycle, but how to manage it and how to best use nutrition as a tool is not something that's not a problem for everyone else, I think, to some degree. So I really wanted to talk to you about not the keto diet and not about how hungry I am, although I really can tell you jokes about that all day long. The issue really is how do you work with your community? How do you help your community create nutrition as a tool? One of the very first things that I've had to do is really identify the gaps in the scientific knowledge, really understand what the science was, and it was not very much. Where were the gaps between where the science is and what the doctors think and what the patients are reporting? Then I really had to understand, based on what we know, and we know some things work, why are patients not using nutrition as a tool? So, I mean, that goes into bigger psychological issues, and nutrition and following a strict diet is a compliance issue. So then I had to delve into, like, why are some people compliant and why are they not compliant? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then really, to make any impact after understanding those two things, I had to really understand lipodystrophy in a way that my physicians and basic researchers felt I really genuinely was a key opinion leader and an expert. So, because it's really kind of difficult to walk into, you know, these rooms with these top experts and say, all right, I think you're wrong about the food, and here's where I think we need to work. I mean, you have to really work finesse, tell a lot of food jokes, and really spend some time with them. In our case, they didn't believe we were as hungry as we were. One of our top researchers, her story about understanding that is, and she was treating lipodystrophy for about 10 years. And then somehow a circumstance occurred where a patient came overseas and the parents had a medical emergency. And despite compliance issues, the only resort was that patient had to come spend the night at her house. And she found the patient in her pantry at about 2 a.m. And it occurred to her then, if this person is so hungry that she's willing to, like, break all social boundaries and go into somebody's pantry in the middle of the night, a stranger's home, she must really have a serious drive. But I don't actually have sleepovers with any of my physicians. So, and nor do I want to. So that was, after all of those years, that's what it took. This is my most favorite. If I don't understand not only lipodystrophy, and I don't understand each component of food, then I really can't make any impact. So no, butter is not a carb. Actually, I can have it on keto, believe it or not. And so talking with my doctors about why I can eat butter and not bread is, wow, we're having a good time. Ultimately, it just comes down to my lab. You know, they just look at my labs, and my labs are explaining to them that butter works and bread doesn't. I would like them both to work, but you can't have everything. I'm not one to read off of a slide, but I did want, but I couldn't address one compliance issue and not another one. And this is not an extensive list, right? But there are actually some of them surprised me. But really, in trying to encourage my community to use nutrition as a tool, I did have to understand why. The bottom line, the first and easiest one, is that they've been going to the ER, to doctors their whole lives. And I hate to use this term that's overused these days, but being fat shamed. Physicians have looked at them and said, you have to stop eating McDonald's. And they promise, I don't. I'm eating kale, I'm eating salads, I'm exercising, my labs are not responding, the statins are not working, the glucose, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. Obviously, over years, you're just, forget it. Fine, I'm gonna eat McDonald's because it certainly tastes better some days than a kale salad. It depends on what you order, but their fries are pretty good. Really, so I just wanted to provide this list as a tool for you to think about when you are working with your community. Another thing that was incredibly important is what can I do to help encourage my community feel more compliant? And I mean, the one thing that I'm so on board with, and I wish I were an expert and I'd love to learn more about, are these food pharmacies. I couldn't get more excited about the idea that people and health insurances are finally figuring out that food, and Jackie's going to talk a lot about this, food can be a medication, and to eat well is expensive. I mean, I love those blogs that say how to eat really well for $1.62 a day, but I mean, ultimately, it's really not that possible. I'm a pretty good shopper, and I'm a gardener. It's really, $1.62 a day is not even a meal, so. Well, not a meal for lipodystrophy. You saw my pasta plate. Forget it. It's a lot of food. I'm laughing because Christian's laughing because anyone who spends any time with me knows that I'm really not at all joking. I can eat a tremendous amount of food. Fortunately, actually, I have it under control. I'm on the compliant list. I'm using my tools, and I'm on the positive list in that last slide. So taking those things in mind, what I would recommend, what I do is start with education, really basic education. No butter isn't a carb. I mean, really simplifying it, and then providing a lot of options. I am incredibly cautious that what works for me does not work for you. I feel terrible in the community groups when somebody's talking and they say, you know, well, I eat this and I'm fine, so eat this. To a person who just had a heart transplant, like, oh, thanks. Had I known that if I just went to low-fat yogurt and milk, I could have avoided this entire heart transplant thing. I mean, silly me. It's a terrible experience, so be very, very cautious that we're all still learning. Set an example. For me, I set an example, and I set a really realistic example. I talk openly about my good days, about my bad days, when I feel like punching someone in the face, because I do not want to eat another chicken salad. I might lose my cool. I did have an adult tantrum a few weeks ago about a bagel. I did. It was an actual adult tantrum. I was very embarrassed, but then I went online and I said, guess what I did today? I had a huge meltdown. Had to force myself from laying on the ground, kicking and screaming. I'm not kidding. And it's chemical, it's in my brain, and I have to forgive myself and laugh at myself. But bagels are delicious. And it really does seem unfair that I could have arms like this and not be able to have a bagel, right? I mean, it seems unfair. By the way, when you make an egg and cheese bagel only and put cream cheese on it, it isn't terrible, but it's not really a bagel. So I'm not entirely buying the keto recipe cookbooks, but you just change your frame of mind on your good days and forgive yourself on your bad days. And you have to provide alternatives. Look, you don't like eggs and I'm telling you you need to eat eggs, then it's my responsibility to say, okay, it's not just this one diet, it's not just this one recipe. Here are modifications for that, try. So when you're working with your community, really try and talk with a lot of your community members. And you know, I'm only addressing the US, I work globally. So I'm talking about our diet, and then in the UK, they're bringing up a food item that I've never heard of, which seems impossible because I eat everything. So how there's something I haven't even tried, I feel like I need to fly over and try it immediately, which is probably worth asking a sponsorship for now that I think about it. And look, you're gonna have a tantrum, you have to provide cheat options. If I don't share with okay, we really feel like we need ice cream sometimes, maybe do this instead of that. It's just unrealistic otherwise. And then finally, I think about age range. what somebody can eat from 2 to 3, if you have teens, forget it. My teens don't have the disease that I have, and it's difficult to deal with them, let alone a rare disease in a different age range. The one incredible tool I've been able to roll out this year for my community is Lunch with Lou. Lunch with Lou is an Instagram cooking video that we have created via an impact grant from Global Genes. It was really exciting for us because one of the things my community feels is that they're not heard. So I can recommend certain diets or cookbooks to them, and they still don't feel understood. So what we're doing with Lunch with Lou is working with our nutritionists, working with our community. We're creating these really fun, short 1-minute videos with recipes that you could find anywhere on the internet. I mean, we don't pull them off of the internet. We work with our nutritionists. But we're not creating a brand new way to eat. But what we're doing is we're saying, we have lipodystrophy, you have lipodystrophy. This is one recipe we use. This is why it's specifically good for lipodystrophy. And I'm floored. I mean, one of our first recipes is how to make your own vegetable broth. I'm literally not talking rocket science. And our community was like, I did not know you could do that. It's like, how did you not know you could make your own vegetable broth? We can't have any sodium for in a lot of cases. I mean, we have to be really careful what we consume. And vegetable broth is so easy, and it's the base of so many different things that we eat. If you make it, your brown rice will taste better. It will, I promise. Try. You'll have to tell me now because I can't eat it anymore, but some people can. So that's on Instagram if you follow us on Lipodystrophy United Lifestyle. I didn't put a little video in here only because I just envisioned trying to talk about how great it was and then say, well, sorry, it didn't work. So do check it out. It's a lot of fun. But no, the one thing I want to leave with is flexibility. Amanda, who you can see in a few of the pictures, she's our host. She has a very extra rare type of lipodystrophy, and she's also a nutritionist. After creating a few videos, Amanda has lost even more of her organs, and we almost lost Amanda, but we didn't. So we're a little bit on pause. We're not rolling it out as fast as we wanted to because Amanda needs some time to recover. The irony is that now Amanda can literally only consume sodium and sodium. She really can't have any fiber. She can't have any vegetables. She can't have any fat. She can't have anything her organs would need to digest because she really doesn't have them anymore. So that's important for us to share because we recognize that not everything is going to work. And sometimes you can be on great track with your diet and using it as a tool, and then something in your disease puts you in a tailspin. And that's not easy. It's really hard. It's not a perfect system, but it's a real system, and we're working on it. And in the meantime, we're feeling a little bit jealous that she gets to eat Pringles all day. Just a little jealous. There's resources if you're interested. It includes some of the tools that I use when I'm just doing research. And it also, I actually don't make up what I say here. If you talk to me later at the reception, I'm probably making stuff up. But I do actually do my research. So if you're interested, you can take a look. Thanks so much. I actually apologize. I'm a little low energy right now because in rare, we have no easy rides, right? My mini fridge froze my medication, and I was on a really bad downswing, but now I'm back on the upswing. So know that it's not easy for any of us, and it was a tough morning. I might eat a Pringle later. I might. We'll see. You can meet near any buffet and ask any questions you want. I'll probably test all the food. I'll tell you what's best. Jacque actually is going to talk to you about what's coming up for lunch and what you should eat, but I'll probably be hanging out there, so you can find me. Sarah?
Yep. All right. They're good here. They got the tech all set up. So thank you, Andra. We're really glad you did make it here this morning because we had all met and worked on our presentations, and they're all very different, but we're hoping they all fit together well and give you some different resources and tools. So glad you're here. I am Sarah Chamberlin. I'm the Executive Director of National PKU News. I am also the parent of a child with phenylketonuria. Like many of you, I became a rare disease advocate by an accident of genetics, or as I like to think of it, by winning a lottery I didn't even know I'd entered. And I'm going to talk about the experience of my organization in creating 2 apps to manage nutrition in rare disease, specifically in phenylketonuria, but then also try to pull from that some general practices or ideas that will be helpful for you in your disease states. I'm going to talk mostly about technical resources because that's really all I know, and you don't want me to talk about other things. But the process and lessons are applicable to any kind of resource you're developing for your rare disease community. That's my daughter, Isabel. I have another daughter as well, but that's Isabel. She has PKU. That was the day her diagnosis was confirmed when she was 6 days old. PKU is an autosomal recessive disorder. It's the inability to metabolize one of the amino acids in protein. And I mentioned the lottery earlier. Really, if you're going to have an inborn error of metabolism specifically, PKU is like winning the lottery. It was discovered in 1939 when a mom with 2 affected kids repeatedly hauled them in to a doctor and said, please figure out what's wrong with them. It's the passion of the families and the advocates who really push science forward along with some great scientific minds. So the disease was discovered, they knew what caused it. By 1958, there was a dietary treatment, which meant all those people who'd been born with PKU, there are about 250 born in the US each year. The numbers vary worldwide, but that's sort of a good number to start with. All those people who'd been born with PKU could be put on dietary treatment, and the neurological degradation that had occurred could be stopped, and some of life's functions could be improved and restored. PKU does cause irreparable brain damage within the first months of life, and untreated, it will continue to progress. But if you start treating it on day 6 or day 5 or day 10, outcomes are equivalent to the rest of the population. So just having that dietary treatment is key. There's that storm we talked about yesterday. So in the 1960s in the US, newborn screening was developed. By 1968, all states were screening for PKU, which meant that every baby born was tested for PKU and could be immediately put on dietary treatment. Again, the more time I spend in the rare disease community, I'm a newbie, this kid is only 6, I realize how lucky we are. There's 6 to 8 years to find a diagnosis, and then even longer to find a treatment for many. PKU actually has 2 FDA-approved treatments, so we are very, very lucky. One of the resources that we have, starting in 1989, before that it was mimeographed and stapled handouts handed around, which are very important as well, was a low-protein food list for PKU. It was a book that had phenylalanine values for 4,000 foods. It went through multiple printings. An amazing dietitian, Virginia Schuett, was the one who compiled it all, but there were many volunteers, parents, caregivers, dietitians in the community who helped her compile that information. And as Andra mentioned, for PKU, diet is the primary treatment. There are 2 FDA-approved treatments. One works for about 50% of the population, depending on the severity of their disorder. The other is currently approved for 18 plus only. So really evaluating the Phe or protein content of foods is essential. You weigh and measure all food. You track daily intake to meet a certain number. You know, my daughter gets 300 milligrams of phenylalanine per day. She shouldn't get, she shouldn't get 285 and she shouldn't get 315. So you're constantly tracking that. And then you monitor blood Phe, say that 3 times fast, through regular blood tests. For newborns, it's weekly or even biweekly, and then it spaces out at 6 years old. My daughter's at 1 a month. And then adults often go longer because they've kind of got this down. They know how to work. Because the biologics only work for a certain part of the population, this resource, the low protein food list for PKU, is really the gold standard and essential for diet. It's also, when my daughter was born in 2013, it was a book. It's not quite a phone book, but it's more like an IKEA catalog size thing. So, this is like, we've had book technology going back to the Gutenberg Bible. It was due for an update. And so in 2014, National PKU News converted the data in there to a web-based app called howmuchphe.org. Really just first imported the data. And I'm gonna go through this process and then I'm gonna tell you how it worked, why it worked, and maybe how to do something differently. We added features like a daily diet log, so you could electronically record it instead of looking things up and then writing them down and adding them up. We added the ability to track, chart, and export intake and blood Phe levels and favorite foods, which helped other caregivers manage a child's diet. Or, again, this is a disease that's lifelong, so if I slip into talking about children, I apologize. I am not leaving out the adults. Then the community requested additional features, the ability to create recipes or to schedule things like the metabolic formula that they eat every single day, and they didn't want to have to keep adding it. And then we built a support network around it with industry, with food manufacturers, because we need to know very exact protein data in order to estimate phenylalanine content, and food labels are rounded in the US, we need to go directly to the manufacturers and convince them that our community is worth assisting. Again, the theme of this talk is luck. We got lucky. The community was, no pun intended, hungry for advancement. A lot of them were very tired of carrying the book around. The underlying resource, the low protein food list for PKU, I cannot overstate what an essential resource it was and what an amazing accomplishment it was and so important to the community. Small changes like the ability to record things digitally were big improvements in the lives of patients. We created a web-based app to lower costs, and it was a passion-driven project. It was, there's nothing like the fervor of a parent or a patient who wants to solve a problem for their community. That's great. It's also not sustainable. I think we've all experienced burnout at some time. And so while all those factors meant that How Much Phe is a success, it's maybe not the best approach to how to create resources for your community. So I'm calling one approach, stop, look, listen, and launch. And for this, I'll just go over quickly a case study from my community again. And I think, Andra touched on compliance issues and why compliance is hard. And that's true whether you have a rare disease or not. Sticking to your diet is very important. So I mentioned my daughter has a tolerance of about 6 grams of protein a day. I also have a friend who has PKU, who's 45, who has a tolerance of 6 grams per day. It often doesn't increase as you age, and so that means it's very hard to feed yourself. Adults with inborn errors of metabolism, of which PKU is one, are less likely to have good dietary control, and that negatively affects their health. That is the finding we started with, looking at the community, looking at what the clinicians were saying. This was because young adults had more freedom and less supervision. Adults with jobs and families had less support from their family and clinicians. Both groups had less time to focus on their diets. and both found themselves in new locations or traveling for work, and they didn't know how to find support for their diet. And one thing that's very important in PKU is that, as I mentioned, phenylalanine builds up and turns into a neurotoxin. And symptoms can happen in a number of days. They're not incredibly severe, but they can affect your ability to concentrate, executive function, all that weighing, tracking, sorting, adding up. Your diet is incredibly hard to do when your blood Phe levels are high. And so it becomes a sort of vicious cycle. So looking at our case study, we stopped. We defined the need, which adults on a low-protein diet need more support to maintain the diet and independence. As I said, I'm focusing on apps. So we looked, and there are vegan and vegetarian restaurant locators, but they don't work for the low-protein diet. Vegans love their lentils and their beans, and that does not work for a low-protein diet. We did a focus group at a national PKU conference, and we also did some online surveys and just surveying the Facebook chatter. And the finding was, listening to the community, that finding groceries and restaurants that fit the diet was the most important need. And so we created an app with the help of stakeholders like Global Genes. We also had a Rare Impact Grant Award for this. And partners in other inborn errors of metabolism community, and we created an app called GoLo Pro. I want to underline, and I'll go back to it, the idea there are other inborn errors of metabolism who they can't break down leucine, or they can't break down another amino acid, so they are low protein as well. So when you're looking at how to build resources for community, look not just at your disorder, but at the nutritional treatment, if there is one, and see if there's commonalities in other disorders. So this is launching. I could have done it today, but I figured that was crazy, because if it had bugs, I'd be up here, not out there fixing them. So probably next week we'll have this app. I have a poster on the development of it as well. Reviewing these, stop and take a moment to see what your community needs. Do they need more information? Are there handouts that a clinic created that you can just help disseminate? Do they need better techniques? Do you need more research, as Andra was saying? See what resources already exist. I have some pretty handouts there, but I also have a screenshot of MyFitnessPal, which a lot of people use even outside rare disease to track their diets. The other screenshot is for something called Plan to Eat. It is a website that helps you plan out what you're going to make during the week, what groceries you need to buy. And I have a friend with PKU who swears by it because it really helps her organize it. So even if levels are high or she's short on time, there is something she can reference to help maintain her diet. Listen to your community, online forums, Facebook groups, we all have them, at patient conferences for your disorder, or at informal gatherings. They mentioned in the app you can search by disorder and see who is affiliated with that. Find those people, get together if you haven't met them yet, and see what they need, and see if you can build resources. And then that last point, expand your community. Do other disease communities share similar nutritional needs? There's an app for that. There doesn't always need to be an app for that. I realize I've just contradicted my whole presentation. But there are other examples of online resources that the PKU community has used. There's a mom who posts side-by-side lunches, low protein and high protein, on Instagram for people to encourage them, to give them ideas, to show that you really can manage this diet. One thing that I think Andra touched on is that often when there's a rare disorder that requires a change in nutrition, the whole family has to adjust. And I think this is actually a great empowering example of how the family can adjust and normalize the nutritional requirements of someone with a rare disorder. An adult with PKU who was off diet started a movement to say, I need an accountability partner. And this was on Facebook. She said, I'm 29, I've been off diet. I really need someone to talk to me and encourage me. And so a bunch of adults paired up and just used, they use chat, they use other mechanisms to encourage each other because they understand what the others are going through. There's also a PKU Pen Pals group. This is again for the kids. What I think is amazing is it matches the kids for offline interaction, like actual a postcard comes in the mail that someone wrote with a pen, and they can like hold it in their hand. And I don't know about you guys, but my kids don't do that. So I think that's a really important thing. And they're not writing postcards about their diet, although they might be about Pringles and other things that they actually get to eat. But it just really gives additional support. And to be honest, they may be writing about Pringles because the diet is such a big part of the lives of these children. So putting it all together, I didn't have you at the beginning, but I think this is really important. Anyone can do this. Patients, family members, advocates, leaders, clinicians, all of you together or separately, each one of us has the ability to reach out to our community and see what they need and try and help and work together on that. Define the needs and see what's missing. Don't reinvent the wheel unless your wheel doesn't exist yet. And listen to the community. Let them drive the design of whatever resource you're developing. And those last 2 bullet points I probably should have put above, because you can't launch without stakeholders who can help you, whether that's organizations like Global Genes or other foundations, and find partners with similar needs and say, hey, can we work together on this? Resources, I mentioned MyFitnessPal for online menu planning, plantoeat.com. And for those who are not sick of hearing me talk about apps, you can come to me and I'm happy to see if there's, if I can give you ideas about what might work for your community. And now Jacque is going to tell us how to eat while we're doing all of this.
Hopefully. I thank you all so much for being here today, and I'm honored and humbled to be here at Global Genes speaking on nutrition. I've got a background, I practiced as a registered dietitian early in my career, but the reason I'm here is for my brother who was diagnosed with an ultra-rare disease about 6 years ago. So community is so crucial, and you guys both touched on that, and I hope I can touch on that a little bit as well. How many of you flew here when you came in? So a lot of you, and you remember the safety announcement where they talk about the oxygen mask. Should anything happen on the airplane, put that oxygen mask on yourself first, and then your loved ones that you're flying with. In our case, our oxygen mask in real life is nutrition. Food matters. Hippocrates is the father of medicine, and he says, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And we heard from Andra and Sarah how nutrition is really important. One thing I want to point out is physicians, when they go to medical school, how much nutrition do you think that they have in 4 years of medical school, and even going into their residency, internships, and fellowship if they specialize in anything? Any guesses? A little bit higher than 0, actually, but a lot of them are 0. 4 hours in like 8 to 10 years. It's crazy. So when you go to your doctors and they're like, food, that doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It 100% does. What Andra eats matters in the way that lipodystrophy is, and for everyone in her disease with that rare disease. And same thing with PKU. These two, they can't eat what I'm going to be talking about here. And I do want to share one post. This was in the Atypical HUS Families Facebook page. And if you guys don't have a Facebook family page or whatever for your rare disease, start it. It was a lifesaver for me. I worked in medical sales when my brother was diagnosed, or when he was in the hospital. We were trying to figure out what was happening. My doctors had never heard of atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome. And then when I went to a conference for the weekend, it was a Global Genes sponsored conference, I legit cried the entire time. From the time I got there and someone knew what atypical HUS was until the time I left, and I don't cry. But anyway, so this was posted on June 9th from someone with atypical HUS, and this person wrote, positive news. I have continued to be able to decrease my blood pressure medicine after being diagnosed and hospitalized for a month in January, resulting in kidney failure. I was ultimately placed on 3 different blood pressure medicines. I'm now down to only 1 medicine, and I've been able to reduce this medicine by 2/3. I might not even need it at all, but I'm likely staying on this dose to help prevent migraines. Not too bad with my kidney function under 40 GFR with a smiley face. My blood pressure started reducing in April after I committed to a plant-based, low-sodium diet and also trying to be as active as my body allows. On a side note, my cholesterol also reduced by 20%. It definitely feels empowering to know I have some control over my health. And this is really, really powerful. She said a couple things in here. First, she changed what she was eating. You guys, we're eating 3+ times. If we are lucky to have lipodystrophy, we eat all day. But if you're eating a minimum of 3 times a day, every day. So what we do eat matters. So she is changing up what she's putting in her body, and it makes impact pretty quickly. And she's also being active, as active as her body allows. So those are 2 things, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about moving the body. So on the left, you see this brown figure, a little bit inflamed. And what's in this inflamed figure? We have a lot of processed refined foods. Now I know that, I wanna see who I'm talking to in here. Do we have any people with rare disease in here? Good, all right. How about advocates, caregivers? Do we have a couple of you? Good, awesome. I go in there too. And then also clinicians or industry, people just chilling, hanging out. Awesome, good. So we have a little bit of everything. So the figure on the left has some inflammatory food, but not some, it has a lot of inflammatory foods in there. A lot of processed foods, pizza, hamburgers. And in some diseases, this is what you need to eat to treat it. But if you don't have a disease that would respond to this, you're actually causing inflammation and hurting the body. So we have to think about what you're.
I just want the pizza disease.
Exactly, I want the pizza disease too. Right? And then listen to what I'm saying, and when I'm talking about different foods, think about how this could relate to you, to your disease, and I'm also available to talk anytime during the conference. I'm on the app. If you want to set up a time to meet with me, I would love to do that. You guys, this is my passion. So we have the inflammatory person or figure on the left with all the inflammatory foods, pastries, sodas, alcohol. But then on the right, you see this green figure, it's leaner, and there's a lot of whole foods, real whole foods, going back to basics, fruits and vegetables, whole grains. So these are the foods that are nourishing and healing to the body and can really help. So now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome starts in our mouth when we're chewing the food that we eat and goes all the way down to the anus when we excrete whatever we're eating. Interestingly enough, the gut microbiome is also called the forgotten organ. So this is our gastrointestinal tract that people until recently really weren't paying very close attention to. And it's also considered our second brain. Have you guys ever said, oh, I just have a feeling, that gut feeling? That's the real thing when you have that gut feeling, because our gut microbiome is literally our second brain. So what feeds our gut microbiome? That's gonna be on the next picture, that WTF, and it's not what you guys are thinking WTF is. WTF is where's the fiber. So we have in life, we also have in our gut microbiome. We've got the good guys and we've got the bad guys. So the bad gut microbiome, they liked all that stuff that was sitting in that brown figure, the inflamed figure, the pizzas, the meats, the cheese, the dairy, the eggs, the pizza, hamburgers, you get the idea, right? French fries, everything. They thrive on those foods. But every single time you're eating these foods, it stays in your blood lipid, like your levels in your body for 4 to 6 hours. You've got those inflammatory markers going. So if you have a rare disease or are working with a rare disease where you're looking at immune systems or anything like that, then it's gonna be really important that we try and minimize the amount of inflammatory foods that we're eating. Now, on the other hand, the good guy is that green stick figure with the real whole foods in there. This is feeding your good gut biome. So we want to have more and more of those real whole plant foods. fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, greens, grains, legumes. We want to eat more of those foods. So then if you look at the Plant Chicks plate, so in the Global Genes app, we have the Plant Chicks 7-day starter kit, and you guys can download that, and you'll actually get recipes that have foods that fit into this Plant Chicks plate. And that the Plant Chicks starter, the 7-day starter kit, is a 50-page ebook. So we've got a lot of really, really good information in there. But when we look at our Plant Chicks plate, protein, everyone in the country is obsessed with protein. Unless you have, well, PKU, you're still obsessed with it, just in a different way, which is a good thing, actually. Because literally, marketing companies, they have glamorized protein and now fat with the keto diet. And with protein, most Americans are getting 2 to 3 times the amount of protein that we need. And when we're ingesting too much protein, that can actually lead to disease. There's been some studies that have shown that eating too much protein can actually lead to cancer. So we want to make sure that we're being mindful of our protein and eating what our body needs, but we don't have to obsess about it. But when in the WTF, where it's the fiber way of eating, we want our protein, all of our macronutrients to be attached to fiber. Where is fiber found? It's found in real whole plant foods: fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, greens, grains, legumes. You don't have any fiber in meat, fish, poultry, milk, cheese. There's no fiber in animal products. So when you're eating your protein, you want maybe 20, 25% of your plate to be protein, right around there, maybe a little bit less, 15, 20%. But your protein, your high protein sources are your beans and legumes. And think about when you're eating, think about eating little bright and colorful foods, because those foods have more phytonutrients and are more nourishing and healing to your body. So black beans, kidney beans, things that have more color. I love those. I'm obsessed with chickpeas and the white beans, but those aren't as nutrient dense as, say, like a black bean or a red kidney bean, but I still eat them and love them. Greens are also a really good source of protein, quinoa as well, and mushrooms. So those could be, like when you're eating those foods, you can consider those proteins. Fats is a very small portion in the Plant Chicks way, and this is people, the healthier population that don't have specific dietary requirements due to their ultra-rare disease. And we can modify this Plant Chicks plate to work with your rare disease, but this would have to be super specialized, and we would work with you and helping to create it for your community. So your fats, instead of going to olive oil, people always talk about, oh, the Mediterranean diet is so healthy, I can have more olive oil. If you're wanting to lose weight, taking the oils out of your diet is one of the best things that you can do. And with the Plant Chicks, we actually recommend eating the whole food. Instead of having the olive oil, just have olives. Instead of having coconut oil, eat the coconut meat. Avocados are delicious. We eat avocados legit like 2-3 times a day. Put them in our smoothies in the morning for breakfast. And your nuts and seeds are really amazing sources of not only fats and omega-3s, but also of protein. So you get like a double winner right there with the fat and the protein. Our carbs are gonna be about 15-20% of the plate. These are more like the fruits and the starchy carbs are corn, peas, what am I trying to think? Potatoes. Again, think potatoes. People always say, oh, I can have potatoes. Yes, as long as they're not French fries. We want to try and have the whole potato. Even white potatoes are good, but the purple potatoes are going to have a little bit more nutrition, or a sweet potato, than a white potato. You guys get the idea. And then half the plate, think about eating the rainbow. So you want to have a variety of colors here. Think about every time you eat, eating like 3 to 5 or more colors on your plate, because you're going to get so many different nutrients and all the different colors. But your vegetables, you can have them raw, you can have them sauteed in low sodium veggie broth, or we really try and steer clear of the oil as much as possible, just for health reasons, working with our Plant Chicks and our Plant Chicks tribe. But you can steam, grill them, do whatever you want with your veggies. Just be mindful of the sodium, unless you're like Andra's friend and that's all she can eat. But even what you guys heard them share, diet is crucial throughout their disease state. So keep that in mind. And this is just some example of different foods that you can eat. And we're going to lunch after that, after this. So what are some things that we should eat at lunch? If you come and eat with me and my business partners here, Marcia, we are gonna be sitting down for lunch, and it looks like we're having a little bit of a Spanish thing, a Mexican buffet, which is yummy, yummy. So I am going to have a lot of fajitas, the veggie fajitas. I'll pile on the veggies, use the corn tortillas. I'm gonna stay away from the queso because it's more inflammatory. They have chips and salsa, and guess what? I am gonna eat some of those because I love me some chips and salsa. But that's gonna be a smaller portion, just so be mindful there. And if you guys want, message me in the app and let me know, like say, hey, what are some good choices for our evening break, for tomorrow for breakfast, for dinner, whatever. Let me know, or make an appointment. We can get together and we can talk, and let's see what we can do to build your community. And I wanna be there to help support you in your journey, in your own personal journey for health and well-being, and also for your community, if possible. So, this was my old presentation, that's all right though. So the nutrition and fitness apps, actually I'm gonna skip over this, and I'll come back to that. One thing, around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, who gets that little slump? Like you're like, I'm a little tired. You might wanna go for that Starbucks coffee, have a Frappuccino, wake up. Really what's happening here is you're getting that low energy light, and what you're missing, instead of the Frappuccino or a cookie or the chips, you really need to go and eat some real whole plant foods. Or better yet, get up from your desk and go walk around the office or get outside, get some fresh air. If you can't ambulate, if you're not able to get out and walk around, just get some fresh air. Take a deep breath, do like a small meditation, because one of the things we wanna ask ourselves every time that we're going to the refrigerator or going to reach for the snack, ask yourselves, halt. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? The only time we should be eating is when we're hungry. And then try and reach for those foods that are nourishing and healing to your body, or if you're a person with rare disease, something that's nourishing and healing for that rare disease. That's the only time we should be eating. If you're angry, get on the phone, call someone, or maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe go and get some exercise, boxing class maybe, that would be good. Get some anger out, do whatever it is. Meditate, do something that works to help you alleviate that anger. If you're lonely, get on Facebook in your community page. Like message someone, reach out. Community is crucial. And that's one of the things I found out very, very early on in my brother's diagnosis. Like it was such a relief to find our Atypical HUS Families page, to see that people knew what my family was going through. And the same thing, even if you're not suffering with a rare disease yourself, if you're the caregiver or you're just working in this industry, it's important to have community, have people there who can lift you up and support you wherever you are in your journey. And if you're tired, this is another time that exercise might be a good thing. Get out, get fresh air, or if it's night, maybe it's time to go to bed. Maybe, who knows? All right, actually I wanna back up. These are a couple different apps, and we heard Sarah talk about MyFitnessPal on the left. Chronometer is another app on the right. And then I had another one in there, and it's Dr. Michael Greger's Daily Dozen. That's another app that we like to talk about in our Plant Chicks tribe. And what we like to talk about, instead of counting macros, we want you to count colors. Again, 3 to 5 different colors on your plate at any time. Also, think about, for your gut microbiome, we want to nourish and heal our bodies, right? Think about eating 30 different plant foods throughout the week. You can keep a log. We actually did a Garden Your Gut challenge, and people were eating 30 to 90 different plants in 1 week. It was insane. It was really, really cool. So really think about gardening your gut and eating a variety of plant foods throughout the day and throughout the week. Here's Brandy. She's a Plantsformation. She presented to us. She was on the standard American diet, eating a lot of the stuff in that brown figure, the pizzas, that she was drinking a lot too, hamburgers, French fries. And then she switched over to a junk food vegetarian diet. She thought she was being healthy, but she was just making, it was now a vegan cheeseburger. That's kind of an oxymoron there. But she had a vegetarian cheeseburger and French fries and still drinking and everything. And then she came to us and she's like, all right, I want to change my entire lifestyle. Now think about it. It takes years for heart disease to start, for high blood pressure to start, decades even. So when you start on your Plantsformation or your health and wellness journey, it's not going to happen overnight that you feel better. Yes, you will start feeling better sometimes right away, but it takes a while for your body to start seeing how much better you are. But Brandy, in 8 months, she switched to a whole food plant-based diet. She started working out. She was working out maybe an hour a day. And it's not always just going in and like lifting weights. She was doing yoga. She was walking. She was being active, hanging out around Dallas. She was doing stuff, right? So in 8 months, she lost 42 pounds and she changed her entire lifestyle. So if you guys want to, take a picture of this one, because if you text 22828 and enter Plant Chicks into the message area, we will send you the Plant Chicks pantry guide and you'll be able to like see what our kitchen staples are, not just our food, but also like our appliances, the things that we like to have for whatever. But this is actually a really good a really good guide that we would love to send you. So make sure you take a picture or send us a text now. You'll have to enter in your email address and then we'll send that to you. And I just want to end with this. You will always come to a fork in the road, literally, always come to a fork. Or your finger, if you eat like me, I always eat with my hands. Will you choose dis-ease? Will you choose inflammation? Or will you choose health and nourishing and healing foods? It's a choice, you guys. Mindset is a choice. And if you're having a hard time with this, it's okay. When children learn to walk, what happens when they fall down? Do they get back up or do they just stay down? They get back up. This is the same thing on our health and wellness journey. Compliance is what we were talking about earlier. And it's so true. None of us are perfect. It's called progress, not perfection. And it's just about getting back up after we fall down and keep walking on that journey into wherever that leads you. But I'm really happy to be here. If you guys liked what you heard, then you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. For the women here, we have a Plant Chicks tribe who we are just there to support and encourage each other on their plant journey. But it's been a pleasure to be here, and I hope we do have some time for questions as well.
Hi, everyone. We'll take just, we are running a little short on time, but that's all right. We'll take a couple of minutes here just to see if anyone has any quick questions.
Hi guys, I loved all three of your presentations and I want to thank you all for sharing your personal stories as well. One of the things that because I have a disease that in the beginning of my journey, I had to pack on the pounds. I had failure to thrive. I needed a lot of calories and so I started on the pizza diet, and as I got older, hormones kicked in and my exercise levels and everything changed. So I had to modify my diet to now being low carb, high nutrients, and I had to change, and that transition was very, very difficult for me. And I know a lot of patients in my situation have that as well. So I was wondering if you had any kind of tips or tools that we could use to keep our motivation levels up when we're making that transition to more whole foods and more low carb and bit less oils in our diet. If you have any kind of tools or tips or ways that you encourage your community members to.
Yeah, I'll answer that first real quick. Jacque may have a different answer. For us, it's a huge problem because hormones affect our metabolics. And so for me, it's really about prediction and realistic expectations and educating the community that what is working now will need to change. I think that change for a lot of people is easier to manage when it's being expected. And that's not a magic answer. But really, I think it's just that going back to that knowledge of why it's happening.
I agree with the knowledge as well. And community, reach out to your community. I invite you to join our Plant Chicks tribe as well. We are plant-based. Not everyone in our tribe is plant-based, that's okay. But literally leaning into the community and posting what's happening, because if it's happening to you, it's happening to other people, and you guys can lean in with one another and help each other through the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example I gave of the accountability partners, and it's also up to you. We talk a lot about sharing. I don't want to, I mean, I don't always want to share my failures. I mean, you talked about sharing your failures and your successes.
Pretty bad, yeah.
But you can also do it one-on-one, whether it's, you might reach out via social media, but find someone who is struggling with the same things, and you guys can take it offline or take it private, because it is often hard to share all those things. But I think, the key that, Global Genes is a huge example of it, but we're going down to the micro level too. The key is community and connection to support you in those transitions.
Right, thank you so much, Andra, Sarah, and Jacque. Let's give them a round of applause. They were awesome. For your expertise and knowledge, we appreciate that so much. At this time, we'd like to ask you to jump on the mobile app and take a quick survey. We will now be moving on to lunch break, which is proudly sponsored by Pfizer. On your way to lunch, please check out the resource tables outside. We will find some of the rare toolkits and various resources provided by our presenters and such. So thank you all so much, and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
Nice job.